Welcome everyone to today's Meet the Wine Critic, together with me, Alexander Emrén, from Rare Wine in West Sweden. And today I'm sitting here with a very special guest, it must be said. It's a pleasure to having you here, Mr. Richard Juhlin.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Wonderful to be here.
Good to hear. I know that you are the person in the world that has the world record for tasting the most champagnes, and that makes me really curious. How many bottles are there actually that you have been trying out?
Yeah, we don't know exactly, but when it comes to bottles, I'm happy that you mentioned not how many different champagnes, because that's easier to find out. But approximately 150,000 champagne bottles I've been, like one right now. There's an estimate, something like that, because there are many bottles which I retasted, tasted the same one a lot of times, but different ones. We're getting close to the 14,000 now.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Amazing number.
Yeah.
And we're sitting here with another bottle today.
Yeah, I had it once before, so it's not a new one, but it's a really great one. And it's I just heard the price, and it's what? Did you have the right figures? Because it's a great vintage. It's the 08. It's the old vines from the best village of all for Chardonnay, and it's a very, very good. I wouldn't say one of the absolutely best, but a very good producer in the village, Luminil, Pierre Moncuy. So a good start after lunch.
Yeah, exactly. Shall we just have a little sip? And maybe you can. How do you approach such a glass of champagne? If you just can give some small advice from your experience. For me, it was important to have one sip before we started to speak, because it's impossible to have full focus when there's a camera at the same time. But in general, I think it's probably one of the most important parts of my success is that I'm coming from the sports world. And in the sports world, it's so obvious that if you are doing something, you want to perform perfectly, you are 100% focused when it's something that you're doing for a short while, if it's not running for hours. If it is to perform a hit in golf, or a long jump, or a strike in football, it's a question of parts of seconds or just a few seconds. So the focus must be 100% at the moment. And it's the same for me each time when I taste a new wine. It doesn't need to be champagne, because the procedure is the same. I don't do it when people are speaking with me, for instance, or I'm thinking about other things. I skip everything and then I do the full procedure, and I don't think so much about the techniques. Of course, I have the perfect technique, but my mind is always very focused and very open to the impressions that I receive. That's the most important thing. Then there are technical details in how to think and so on. But over those at least, let's say 20 seconds at least, I need to make a perfect tasting of every new glass of champagne that I taste. Wow. And in terms of experience, which you definitely have a lot of, you have been a professional in champagne since 1998. That must be the dream job, earning money by drinking champagne.
Yeah. To try to sum it up, I would say it's rare. It's still rare, but it's becoming more and more people who can do that, who can live on their knowledge concerning wines and champagne in particular. Why? Because the interest is so much higher and bigger. The champagne world is growing, and there are so many new producers, so many things to learn, and there are so many people who want to buy the great champagne. That's why you are here in this business. And because of that, there will be more and more people who can live on this passion. And for my own sake, there's a combination between, I have a special talent, which is a super sensitivity connected to the memory. So I have some kind of photographic memory for smell, which I of course didn't know about before I did this. It's not what you discuss with other people. To have this kind of approach to champagne, I was the first. There were a lot of people who were working as wine journalists, even one or two, especially English people, who were specialized in champagne, and of course they wanted to learn more, but they did it in a more traditional way. They were reading, they were tasting, drinking, but they didn't look behind in a way that with this extraordinary curiosity that I had from the start. And also there were so many fields that people didn't know about. So, and I was very happy coming from Sweden, because Sweden was a very uninteresting country for wine producers all over the planet, because we were too small clients and we didn't make any wine, we didn't have any knowledge ourselves. So, and that was an advantage for me, because I was not treated the perfect way when I came. And I was not professional. I was a young football player and had this as a hobby. And the hobby gained, and so I saw things which the champagne producers normally were hiding, or they were taking the wine journalists into a journey which was with a lot of false truth. Champagne cannot be aged. Champagne must come from a blend of the 3 grapes. Champagne must come from the big houses. You know, these kind of things. So even great wine critics believed that. When I came and met producers like this, it's a very good example. A small grower having grapes in one of the 17 Grand Cru villages, one of the best, and produce something very, very clean, very special, very terroir-driven. That was a no-go for people around in the wine world. Today it's almost the opposite. People are looking more and more, perhaps too much, after just singularity, pure expressions of a single vineyard or a grower, when the big houses can produce some extraordinary blends as well. So
you kind of like find the gap in the market.
Yeah.
Where you fit in quite well then.
Yeah, for sure.
Is that also where the idea came from the beginning? Why you actually started to do what you do, or where did this idea come from the beginning?
It's not why it started, but it was one of the things that I realized in my journey that made I was more and more convinced that I want to learn people more, I want to educate people. I got this mission, saw that, hey, these growers, look at the price, the bargains you could get from some great growers from Grand Cru and Premier Cru villages. That was definitely one thing. The ability to age, tasting old champagne and see no one is buying those in auctions, but they become even better when they're 30, 40 and sometimes 50 years old. Those kind of things gained my interest, and I felt there was a gap, there was a lack of education. I think the major reason for those kind of things that we are into right now is this paradox between champagne as a party drink, this very exclusive, very expensive, very special, almost not like a wine, that it was separated from all the others, and at the same time the lack of willingness to learn about it. When you spoke about Bourgogne and Burgundy and Bordeaux, everybody was looking at different chateaus. Yeah, exactly. They were sitting like this, not smiling. But when it came to champagne, the same people were drinking this more in bad types of glasses, too chilled, too much, too cold, and so much connected just to the pleasure without thinking and no analysis. And this big gap between these two worlds, champagne's been gaining a lot of the money coming into the champagne industries, coming from the lifestyle connection with champagne, and of course that should always be there. But what I've been doing very much is to bring it into the great world of wine. And of course it's where it should be. And when you start to look upon champagne in that field, you see that there's no wine in the world which is better. There might be some others in other categories which are equally good. But if you look at the best wines in the world, champagne is really on the number one for me. But at least one of the three that is always among the top.
But what about if I would like to be the next one, the next Richard Juhlin, not only in Sweden but all around the world? Yeah. Can everyone do it, or
No.
Okay.
You can't. But I think that there will be. I think that probably the most. What could be done? There is an advantage for the one who wants to take over after me. It is that I'm not that known in. I don't have that many followers in social medias. You could definitely be one, especially in the Asian countries, to cover the world in a much broader way than I've been doing. You can definitely quite fast with the right kind of money, the right kind of investments, and so on. You can cover the world with knowledge in a far better way than I ever succeeded, and I think that will pop up very soon, at the same time as me or after me. I don't know, but when it comes to the knowledge part, there's also, you can come up to the same kind of knowledge. It's rare to get it because you need to work for a very long time. The thing which is impossible to do, it is to reinvent the wheel. Because I found so many things which are things that was not found before, and it's not as much to be found.
Okay.
That's probably my biggest advantage. Is Richard already found that back in 2008. He wrote that. Yeah, he saw that phenomena. That even if champagne is changing all the time, there is for sure truth that I found. I think that's one part which is an advantage for me. Yeah. The other part is this talent, this approach. The approach, there's so many who've been starting to follow me. I have some good example, some really good friends who've been tasting a lot with me, and they are adapting my kind of thinking, and they are tremendous tasters. So you can copy a lot, and if you have the time, the passion, and the financial strength behind you, you can do a lot. And you can follow and see all the new things that are happening in the champagne world, for sure. Follow that. And I think no matter if it's one or if it's 10 people who are leading, it will be, from now on, there will be people finding the things that are interesting to find in the champagne world. Even another group of very important people is the producers, because they used to be very narrow-minded. They know what they were doing themselves, didn't even look at the neighbor. Today, the community of Champagne, they are looking at each other, they're tasting each other's wines, they're sharing experiences in an absolutely new way. And the knowledge they are sitting on is the best. That's most of my new knowledge that I obtain is coming from them. Okay. Over a glass of champagne and say, have you tasted this one? I think, you see, he's using a little bit of that and that. And so it will be much easier to follow, because I made up the plan. This is how you should taste, this is how you should think, this is quality is done in those kind of ways, but there is a huge variation in how to obtain the best champagnes.
I think I will leave you by yourself on the top and not go there, but in the best case maybe I'll just end up as a quite bad copycat of Richard Juhlin in the end of the day. But that's interesting, really interesting. Yeah. But like we said, you have dedicated your life into champagne for more than 20 years. How
35 years.
Okay.
No, well, you said 98, but I started in 86. So in 86, I fell in love with champagne, and I was reading as much, I was tasting as much already then. It was in 98, I skipped my job as a sports teacher.
To become professional.
Yeah, exactly. But before that, I was even as passionate as well.
Wow.
Since 86.
But but let's, if we just take a look at like the last, it doesn't matter, 20, 30 years, how have you experienced that the champagne market has developed during these years?
Especially the last 10 years. That's so different.
The biggest difference is actually the ecological, biodynamical, or natural wines, no matter what label you put on them, but the work in the vineyards and the amount of oak barrels. When I started, there were 3 producers, 3 houses, Alfred Gratien, Boulanger and Krug, and a few growers like Anselm Solos just started with it. But otherwise, oak barrels were in the beginning of the 60s, then they were out from all the others. Now they're coming back. The lower dosage, that's another thing. And single vineyards. And how I can see this so clearly, I would say the biggest revolution is this year. Because every year, before I went down to Champagne most of the time, and I was traveling around, it's very time consuming to go from producer to producer with all these thousands of producers you have. So today I taste the majority of the wines at the same table in my own glasses, have everything sent. I taste them in groups but blind, so I really can judge them in a correct way. But when I receive them and I should write in for my own computer base, the tasting library in Champagne Club, today I can look at the back labels. It was 3 years ago, it was rare. Now it's 95% who gets information on the back label. And the information is, I would say, every second bottle made in oak barrels, very low dosage, ecological, biodynamical. I know the figures are not 50% or 60%, but from the ones that I receive, and it's around 1,000 different champagnes that pops up in a year, it's so different. And when that started, let's say 10 years ago, when you had some of those producers, they were not very good. Most of them working that way had over-mature grapes, lack of terroir, which is completely the opposite of what they want to show. They were big, bold, rich, oaky, sweet with low dosage, but over oxidative characteristics very, very often. So if you went to a terroir outside Premier Cru and Grand Cru, you could find something which was, wow, quite impressive for coming from such a lousy place. But when you came into places like this, it was a disaster. It was more like, why did they kill this beautiful terroir and the purity? Today, that's not the case. Today, there is, most of the champagnes are slightly better than they used to be, thanks to this, the new generation who wants to pay respect to the climatic change, to nature, and also, of course, they're checking, okay, we might have a success with our own champagne, not selling everything to the big houses because the neighbor did something good, or it actually started with Anselm Solos very much and his success. And he's definitely not the only one, but he was the beginner with a great success, and so many others are following.